So this is my first session with a new mustang that just came in for training. This is Fraser. Fraser is a 4-year-old Antelope Valley gelding, and he came all the way from Virginia. And I'm just going to be going over all of my initial exercises I do in that first session when I get a new horse in for training. And that's obviously not counting the wild horses that come in. You know, he's halter broke and has some basic handling. So I'm just going to go over all my basic exercises to get a good feel of him and see what he knows or doesn't know. Right here, I'm just doing some touching on him just to make sure he's not sensitive and just feel how he feels when I'm petting him. As you can see, he's trying to move when I'm going near his haunches, and I'm just going to use my hand to block him off. And what I'm doing with this guy is a lot different than what I usually do. I'm doing positive reinforcement and clicker training. It's just something I'm trying out, right off the bat. I usually bring it in later on for very minimal stuff, but I wanted to try something new. So whenever he's good and does what I want, I click and give him a treat. But I am teaching him to keep his head away from me, so you'll see me push his head away a lot. And that's just so he doesn't start begging. After getting a good feel of them and how they are with their body being touched, I usually roll right into some rope desensitizing. And there's a few different exercises that I'll do with this, and you'll see it all throughout here. And this is just to see how reactive he is. A lot of horses will get very squirrely and jump around and reactive when they get a rope swung around their stomach or back legs or their haunches. So this kind of just gives me a good idea on where he's at and just build off of that. When I go to that other side, I start right back from the beginning. I'm just swinging it back and forth a little bit and then go to his body with it. I start on one side, go through a minimal amount of exercises, and then I'll go to the other side and start completely over doing the same stuff. And he does really good with that. He's really not reactive at all with it, which is great. And I really like to see that because I've had a lot of reactive horses in the past few months. So it's nice to kind of get a little bit of a quieter one, I guess you could say. With this guy, I chose not to do both sides with the rope around his legs just because he was really quiet about it and I didn't really see a point in it. I don't believe it was skipping any steps. He wasn't bothered at all by the rope, so I just moved along. This is mocking some girth pressure, getting a feel of how he's going to be with something around his stomach. He wasn't sensitive at all. He didn't get any tension or move around a little bit. He just stood perfectly still with the girth pressure, and I even brought it back a little bit since some of them get more reactive towards the back of their stomach, and he did really good with that. Moving on to sending him out onto a lunge circle, I was planning on just walking this guy because he's had a long trip. He already knows how to lunge, which is why he's doing it so effortlessly, but he does need to learn how to not tug on it and just be softer. And he's going to start learning how to disengage his haunches to stop and get a lot more softer and responsive, but I just wanted to get a feel of where he's at with that. So the reason you see me lifting my hand and the rope so high up when I disengage their haunches is to help guide their body into it since they don't know about it yet, and it helps them out a lot. Every horse that comes through my program has to learn how to back out of my space, and there are a few different methods that I use for it. First things first is shaking the rope. And because they don't know about it, you start with a lot more pressure and a lot more movement with the rope so that they can learn to understand it. And then eventually you should be able to do minimal effort from it, but it's just in the beginning phase that they have to have a lot more pressure. So I'm going to start going into body movement or control, and I use a dressage whip for that since pressure feels different with that and it's a lot easier for them to understand. And of course, before I introduce a new tool, I'm going to show it to them. I want every horse to be comfortable with whatever tool I'm using being rubbed all over their bodies, being moving around them. That means swinging it up and down, whatever I have to do, just getting them super desensitized to the tool first, because I don't want them to be scared of it at all while I'm working with them and using that as a training tool. I want this guy to learn how to move his shoulder off of pressure, and I'm tapping his shoulder and guiding his head, and I don't release until that front foot crosses over. Now, I'm not looking for him to learn how to pivot in this first session. I just want him to understand the pressure to move his shoulder out of my space or away from the pressure. Next, he's going to learn how to back out of my space off of pressure on his chest with the whip. This is a pretty quick and easy exercise. It's just getting them used to that pressure and the motion to just back out of my space. I'm then going to move over into some disengaging the haunches work. And this guy probably already knew how to do this because he was very responsive with it and he knew exactly where to put his feet. But no matter how much the horse that comes in knows, these are the same exercises I'll do no matter what. I'm either going to go over it and refresh it, or I'm going to completely teach him how to do it. Now I'm going to work on getting him softer in the halter. He's going to learn how to flex on both sides. And what I'm doing is holding pressure, and I want him to turn his head into me and hold it. And I'm not going to release it as soon as he turns his head in. I want him to learn how to be soft and flexible. And so I'm going to let him hold that position for a little bit before releasing. Usually after that first initial time I ask and they struggle, it becomes really easy, and they usually understand it really well after that. And that's pretty much how he was. He knew right away what I was asking as soon as I went back to it. The last thing I'm going to do in this pretty easy intro session is just desensitize him to my ribbon wand. This is made by Raven's Equine Products. It is an amazing product, and it's pretty scary to these guys, and so it really does build their confidence up and sets them up for success with some other obstacles and tools that you'll introduce later on. And it's the same thing as with the dressage whip, like I showed earlier. I show it to them at first, and I'm just going to start getting him used to me rubbing it on his body. And he was pretty interested by it. He was curious, but he was also a little bit nervous. But it didn't take much for him to build that confidence up and accept it, and I was really happy with that. He's a pretty brave little horse. Fraser is definitely a quiet-minded horse. It does not take much for him to just accept what I'm asking of him, and this tool is usually a lot more of a big deal to most Mustangs that I get in, and so I was really happy with him for how confident and brave he was when I went from just touching him to swinging it above him, around him, going from side to side, and he just did really, really well with that. Overall, Fraser did really, really good in this intro session. It was just some basic exercises so I could get a good feel of him, and the same for him to me. And he did really well and took everything in stride, and I was just really happy with him. He's a great little horse.